Hi, Center Stage. I'm so happy to be talking to you today. My name is Lisa Snowden-McCray. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Baltimore Beat, a nonprofit news outlet here in Baltimore City. I am also the managing editor of the Real News Network, an alternative news source based in Baltimore, specializing in news local, international, and national. The folks at the Center Stage asked me to speak to you today about telling Baltimore's story. Specifically, who gets to tell that story? I think it's because it's something I've been yelling about for the last few years. It's part of the reason why I started my nonprofit newsroom, the Baltimore Beat. One of the first things I learned as a journalist working in Baltimore City was how many people were not listened to. There's a lot of reasons for this. A big one is how white dominant the journalism industry is, not just here in Baltimore, but nationally. How can you tell the stories of people you could never have encountered before? People whose language you don't even speak. This is counterproductive to what journalism is about. It's supposed to be about telling stories, everyone's stories. But how could we if we don't even know everybody's stories? Often in journalism, the stories that we need the most can be erased, or worse, ignored. And those are the stories of people who are poor and black and brown. Their stories can be messier. My friend and colleague, Brandon Soderberg, along with Baynard Woods, wrote a book about the Gun Trace Task Force, a group of crooked cops who were robbing Baltimore citizens, mostly black ones. However, Baltimore's black citizens knew for a long time that police officers had been using their influence to their own advantage. They begged police officers, they begged elected officials for help. It's just that nobody listened. Now, it's more important than ever to listen. People are mourning. Journalist Marissa Evans wrote about this in her piece, The Relentlessness of Black Grief, in The Atlantic last week. Grief in this country has always had an equity problem, and 2020 has only amplified the issue, as black deaths have come back-to-back blows from the coronavirus, police brutality, and the natural deaths of those we look up to the most, she wrote. Each new death, each new example of an old injustice renews our grief, sending little shock waves of sorrow. In Baltimore, a city that is mostly black, people are in pain. Even if you aren't one of the residents of this city who has lost a loved one, or a job, or a special occasion to this disease called COVID, you know someone who is. You know someone who is hurting, and it's important to listen to them because they are the way forward. Grief is ugly, and in our society, we often try to hide it, but there can be beauty in it too. We can use this time where we've all been knocked out of the lives that we knew to reevaluate how to live in this new world. How can each one of us elevate the grieving? How can we give them comfort? How can we lift up their voices? How can we fix the conditions that caused their death? One thing you can do if you're white is really sit with and deconstruct the things you were taught about the city's most marginalized communities. A few years back, I wrote a piece for the Washington Post about a tragic incident that happened here in Baltimore. A woman was killed by her husband, but he blamed her death on a panhandler, a black mother looking for food for her child. Soon, people were talking about cracking down on panhandlers. And even Oprah said she would think twice before giving someone who was begging for money help. Everyone quickly latched on to that narrative, even though, as I said, it was the husband who was responsible for the woman's death. Maybe he even knew that it would be easier for us to believe someone who was poor and hurting. It's also important that we use this time to challenge the root causes of what we understand. So there are people who are quick to blame Baltimore's entrenched crime problem on bad people or even broken families. They ignore the violence of denial, denial of good education, denial of healthy food, denial of clean air and clean water that happens before anyone even thinks about picking a gun. What were you taught that you need to change? Baltimore is an amazing city, full of beautiful people with beautiful stories. But still, even right now in 2020, maybe even more so now, the people that need us the most are pushed to the margins. All of us are challenged. Any one of us who's able to weather this coronavirus in the comfort of our own home, with access to things that most people don't have, are challenged to not only challenge our own internal narratives, but figure out ways to push the people that need the most help to the forefront and pass the mic. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys stay safe and healthy. Have a great day. Thanks.